The anti-gun folks will say, wow, that works so well, it should apply to every person who owns a gun.
We're the Armed Attorneys. Today we're talking about the newly signed into law Safer Communities Act and the impact that it's going to have on law-abiding gun owners. Now, we're going to be doing a series of these videos breaking down the sections and how they affect us. But this first one we're talking about is the juvenile purchase records and the prohibitions on and limitations and delays on 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. But before we begin, show your support for the Second Amendment by hitting that like button. And to start off this conversation, we're talking about this is effective. This is signed into law, signed by President Joe Biden, June the 25th, 2022. So this is the law of the land currently. We're reviewing this, large Safer Communities Act law, and we're going section by section, doing a little bit more in-depth discussion. This discussion, we're talking about section 12001, and this relates to juvenile records, Edwin. So give us an overview of what this section relates to.
Basically, what this section does is it says for an 18, 19, 20-year-old, when they go to an FFL to purchase a long gun, because keep in mind they're still prohibited from purchasing handguns, when they go to an FFL to purchase a long gun, their juvenile records will be subject to scrutiny to determine if they violate or if they are disqualified from one of the provisions that currently exist under 18 U.S.C. 922D or G.
So what we see with this prohibited persons list, it is also changed a little bit with misdemeanor crimes of domestic violence. We're going to talk about that in a future video. But the logistics of this, what it looks like is an 18, 19, or 20-year-old goes to their mom and pop gun shop, their local FFL. They attempt to purchase a long gun, and then there's going to be a delay. Now, there's going to be at least a 3-day delay, but it could be longer. And in that 3 days, the NICS system is going to query the juvenile mental health records repository of that state, the criminal justice records for juveniles in that state, and contacting local law enforcement to see if there's any cause or reason why the transfer should not take place. Now, if any of these 3 repositories say, hey, we have cause to believe that this transfer should not take place, the NICS system and the FBI have an additional 7 business days to further investigate. And so this is 10 business days total, but it could be as long as 14 days if we include weekends. Now, what are these agencies looking for? They're looking to see if the person that they're trying to transfer this to, 18, 19, or 20-year-old, has any qualifying disqualifications under 18 U.S.C. 922. So is that person a felon? Is that person renounced their citizenship? Have they been committed to a mental institution? I guess they could be looking for any of these things. But really, I think what they're going to be honing in on are the juvenile justice records and the mental health records. But they kind of have this catch-all, and I think this is why they included it, of contacting the local law enforcement to say, hey, do y'all have any other reason to believe that this person would be disqualified? And I think that's why they're included.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out logistically, because these records have never been required to be reported to the NICS system yet. And they actually kind of acknowledged this in the law. They said that this juvenile record search will be in existence for the next 10 years. And so what they hope to do in the next 10 years is incorporate those records into the NICS background check. And this is where I believe the Trojan horse is. If there's any provision of the law that was signed that can be expanded to all current lawful gun owners, it's this provision. And so what I believe is that in a couple of years, may not even take that long, the anti-gun folks will say, wow, that works so well for 18, 19, 20-year-olds. Guess what? It should apply to every person who owns a gun. And so this is the, in my opinion, this is the part of the act that we need to keep our eyes on.
Yeah. And, we got to discussing, different hypotheticals, what this would look like. And it does raise an interesting issue. What if you had a, 20-year-old who would be subject to these expanded juvenile record searches? They go in, attempt to purchase a firearm, let's say 2 months before their 21st birthday, and were denied because of a juvenile record that would make them disqualifying, or maybe even a mental health record. Well, what happens if they come back to the FFL in 2 months when the FFL is no longer required to perform this juvenile check?
Yeah, and I think that is a question that is unanswered under the legislation. And, we can see how that's a distinct possibility. So you deal with somebody who's 20 years old and 11 months. They go to try to purchase a rifle from an FFL. They contact the local law enforcement and says, yeah, that kid was sent off to a mental facility back when he was 16. That is a disqualifier under 922. He doesn't get the rifle. But then 2 months later, he becomes 21 years old and 1 month, goes to a different FFL, tries to buy. That FFL only runs the current NICS check. That record is not in the NICS check. Does he get his rifle?
Right. And I don't think we know the answer to this, but no doubt that this will be called a loophole as soon as this situation arises. We do have that sunset provision, September 30th, 2032, but it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out logistically. Now, if you're not already subscribed, we have a huge chunk of our audience. You're not subscribed. We're going to be going and breaking down each one of these sections in this new gun control bill, and you won't want to miss any of it. But we hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, if you have any questions about it, make sure to leave a comment below. And until next time, we're the Armed Attorneys.